Hey everybody, Bijan Tagava here. This is a really cool time because we're going to be talking about Kenny Barron's melody transcription of Autumn Leaves, right? I call it a melody transcription, but this is after he's already played the melody rubato solo piano a couple times through actually, but this is the first time that the trio comes in, right? And since he's already played the melody a couple times, he's sort of doing what I'd refer more to as melodic embellishment. So it's kind of half melody and half improvisation. It's not totally improvisation though, because he's still kind of treating it like a head-in, but there's a lot of embellishment happening, right? So it's not just straight melody, but there's a lot of gems to take away from this, both with the right hand and the left hand. So let's get right to it. You'll see in the description I have the PDF. Make sure you're following along with the PDF, and I have a couple annotations with the transcription as well. So make sure you're following along with that as I'm going through everything here. Okay. So at the very start, a common Kennyism is his use of chord note triplets. Right. He uses this elsewhere in the transcription as well, but chord note triplets is a really swinging rhythm, and Kenny uses that a lot throughout his playing, and it's just such a swinging rhythm. Just those 3 chord note triplets. And he uses that as his pickup here into the melody. Right? You also notice with the right hand that he's punctuating that very first melody note with an octave. Right? Octaves is a device that Kenny would use a lot. You'll see very soon here he's using octaves again, but it just emphasizes that melody note a little bit more. Really cool texture to use. After that, right, really tasteful use of grace notes there. The flat 3 resolving to the 3rd, right, because this is over a B flat chord. Right. By the way, you see chord note triplets there too, even though it's between beats 2 and it's on beats 2 and 3, right? So because of the C count 3 rule, it's written a little bit weird. In terms of notation, you'll see this written as a chord note to an 8th note, and that 8th note tied to an 8th note, and then a chord note, triplets. But the reason it's notated like that is because of C count 3, right? So it's still a chord note triplet rhythm though. And here, so you see Kenny using octaves again, and this is a classic Kennyism right here. Okay. Just to make this sound bluesier and a little more greasy, rather than playing grace notes on both ends of the octave, right, which is all fine and dandy, you can totally do that. But what I love about what Kenny does, and like I said, this is a Kennyism, he uses this all the time, is he only slides from the bottom note, right? And that's what makes this really greasy, because you basically already have a note that's resolved up top, but the bottom note sort of has a delayed resolution because of that grace note leading into the octave note, right? So that's what's going on in the right hand for the first A. There's a couple things I want to point out in the left hand. First are his voicings that he's using. The very beginning for C minor 7, he's playing this voicing right here. That's 7, 3, and 5, right? So a common way to play that kind of voicing is to stick the 9 in there. But you notice that Kenny's leaving out the 9th. Why is that? Even though that 9th, it's not like Kenny's not hip enough. He knows that he could add the 9th, but he's not adding the 9th because he's going for a more spacious sound, right? The vibe that he's going for through here is a really sort of bouncy, spacious, right? And you hear that with this transcription. So if he played that D here, it would make this chord a little bit too dense, and that cluster is really going to come out. So it makes it a little bit too dense. So to be more spacious, he's leaving out that D. Right? And here for F7, he's really just playing these 2 notes here, but the formation, his hand is over these 3 notes. Right? So even if this note's not coming out or he's not playing it, this is what he's thinking. He's thinking of this 3-note voicing. And you notice the voice leading there is really beautiful. Right, from that C minor to F7. This F7 is with a flat 9 up top. Okay. Then from there we go to this chord here for B flat major 7th. Now you might be looking at this and be wondering, what the heck is this? That's A flat, right? B flat major 7 should be A natural. So what Kenny's doing here is he's playing a B flat 7, B flat dominant 7th in place of B flat major 7. And why does this work? In this particular instance, it's because you can sub that as a secondary dominant, right? Because you have that 5-to-1 bass motion, because you have B flat going to E flat. No matter that it's not the main 5-1 of the key, we're in the key of B flat, so the main 5-1 is F to B flat, right? But no matter what the movement is, as long as it's a 5-to-1 bass motion, which in this case it is B flat to E flat, rather than playing B flat major to E flat major, you can go B flat 7, sub that as a dominant chord to add some more tension release to that 5-to-1 bass motion. Right? And then you notice for that E flat chord, he's playing an E flat 6-9 voicing, right? And this is a common thing that Kenny would do for a lot of major chords. Right? It also really works nice because it's only a 3-note voicing. Now for this you could add the 7, or you could add the 5, right, to make it a 4-note voicing. But that 3-note voicing goes with this sort of vibe that he's doing throughout, and it keeps the amount of voices consistent, right? A lot of times we think, because since we're not writing for, you know, a vocal quartet or a string quartet or a 5-piece sax soli, right? Because we're not writing for these instruments, sometimes we get lazy with our, you know, number of voices when we're playing on the piano, because we can very easily just add notes or take away notes if we feel like it, right? And that has a place. That's the beauty of the piano, is you're not limited to that. But if you think like a writer, if you think like a composer, you can't just randomly take voices in and out, because it's going to sound like people are dropping in and out. It's going to sound really awkward, right? You can't have a 5-piece sax soli and then all of a sudden at one part you leave one of the voices out and it's 4 voices, then suddenly it goes back to 5, and suddenly you take 2 out and bring 1 in, take 1 out, 2 in. It's going to sound like people are dropping in and out. It's going to sound really awkward. So that's a challenge that you can take up with your left-hand voicings, is see if you can keep the number of voices consistent. Not just left-hand voicings, even when you comp 2 hands, or if you're playing block chord kind of things, is see if you can keep the number of voices consistent, right? And that's what Kenny's doing here. He's playing 3 voices throughout. C minor 7, F7, E flat 7, E flat major 7. And typically the voicing you'll see for E flat major 7 rootless is 3, 5, 7, 9. Right? But you see, this voicing just gives you a little more freedom sonically and also harmonically too. Right? So this is a really beautiful voicing. One of my favorites to play for major chords, no matter what the chord is. C major 7, you know, etc. B flat. Then you notice coming up for A minor 7 flat 5. He's playing 1 flat 5 flat 7. He's leaving out the flat 3rd, right? And you might think that's blasphemy. Isn't the 3rd the most important note of the chord, the 3rd and the 7th? How could he be leaving out the 3rd? Well, minor 7 flat 5 functions a little bit differently. Barry Harris, one of the jazz piano legends, always talks about minor 7 flat 5 as being minor with the 6 in the bass, right? So for example, D minor 7 flat 5 is not D minor 7 flat 5. It's F minor with the 6, D in the bass, right? And in this case, A minor 7 flat 5, it's not really A minor 7 flat 5. It's really C minor with the 6 in the bass. Okay? So this E flat is sort of the 3rd of C minor, right? So this would be the really important note to bring out in C minor. So that's why this E flat is really essential to this sound. Right? So the flat 5 almost functions like the 3rd for minor 7/5 chord types. Right? A common way to do this with a 4-voice voicing would be to add the 4th here as a cluster rather than even the 3rd. Right? To add that 4th is much more common to play this voicing like this. It's almost becoming like that's like a F7 rootless, right? So that's the voicing he's using for A minor 7/5. And then he also does this chord here under the A minor 7/5 measure, which, what is this? This is actually A7 altered, right? So this is 7, 3, sharp 5, right? So where did A7 altered come from? First of all, where did A7 come from? Again, secondary dominant, right? Because you have that bass motion, that 5-to-1 bass motion, A to D. Even though the A is a minor 7/5 chord type, you can make that a dominant 7th because it'll create some more tension to then resolve to that hypothetical 1, right? Rather than just, you can go, right? Which is what Kenny does here. And then once it's a dominant chord, then you can make it altered too. So you have A7 altered in place of A minor 7/5. And then you have another thing I wanted to bring up is this really cool movement Kenny does for the G minor chord. So he just punctuates the root, then he goes natural 7, and then he plays a G minor 7 rootless voicing with the flat 7 on the bottom. So what's really taking place here is this movement of root, natural 7, flat 7. Sometimes you'll see people do this fully voiced, right? Or even in like a bossa nova kind of setting like that. But even in swing, you see Kenny using it here. Right? He's not fully voicing it out. Sometimes you'll see people fully voice these out. But in this particular situation, though, Kenny is still bringing out that movement of the root to the natural 7 to the flat 7. Okay? So let's hear Kenny actually apply all of this with the first A section. So listen for all that stuff in the left hand as well as the right hand, the use of the octaves and the grace notes. Okay, so I let it play a little bit longer there. And the reason I did that is because I wanted you to hear, especially here there once the second A section pops up. But this is throughout. With Kenny's left hand throughout, you hear a lot of offbeat comping, right? A lot of offbeat comping. And part of the reason of that is because if you're playing in solo piano, it's really important to bring out those downbeats, right? You have to provide a sense of the downbeat to the listener, right? It can't just be all offbeats. Otherwise, the audience will never get a sense of where one is and where the downbeats are, right? You need the downbeats in order to feel the upbeats, right? So without the downbeats, upbeats don't mean anything, right? But here Kenny is playing in a trio setting, right? Where you already have the bass and the drums providing the downbeats, right? The bass is playing a 2-feel, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3. And the drums the brush is bringing out the downbeats too. So you have two instruments that rhythmically their pretty much sole function is bringing out the downbeats, right? So that gives the pianist, especially in a trio setting, the freedom with their left hand to really create that syncopated feeling with the left hand, play a lot of offbeats, which is really swinging, and Kenny does that here to perfection. A second thing that I wanted to point out is you see a lot of anticipations within those offbeat compings. Harmonic anticipations, meaning particularly with the left hand, you'll hear him anticipating the chord of the next measure on the and of 4, right? So you see right in measure 9, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. So this and of 4 even though we're technically on the measure of F7, he's doing and of 4 to B flat, right? And in measure 9, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. That and of 4, he's anticipating F7 by a half beat, right? Same thing, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2. Approaching E flat major 7 by a half beat, right? Same thing with A minor 7 flat 5, same thing with D7, same thing with G minor. This entire second A section, he's doing anticipations all the way through there, right? A couple things on the right hand I want to point out. In the second A, so there, what is that? You get a little bit of a hint from his left hand. He's approaching that B flat not as B flat major, but again he's approaching it as a B flat 7, but not only a B flat 7, in this case he's playing it as a B flat 7 altered. Right, that's all. Right. Right, so this is sharp 9, 3, root, flat 7, sharp 5, 3, sharp 9, flat 9, and then resolves to B flat for E flat major 7, right? Now, for that E flat major 7, this is, if there's one phrase, I mean, there's so many phrases to take away from here, but this is a classic Kennyism right here. This phrase that he uses over the E flat major 7, you notice he's using 9-1 here, right? So, for E flat major 7, and then into A minor 7 flat 5. This is a really melodic, really tasteful phrase right here. And this G here on the and of 2 is almost like a ghost note. He plays it really soft though, right? So that's also important with this transcription too. It's not just a matter of looking at the page and reading the notes. You really have to hear the way he does it to hear how he's playing the notes. It's not just what notes he's playing, it's how he's playing it. Which notes are loud, which notes are soft, which notes are articulated in what way, which notes are long, which notes are short, right? So those things are really, really important. How is almost as important as what, right? I'd argue even more important. But that phrase is a great one. Right? And that's one of those phrases I would say definitely take that through the keys, right? C major. Right? And so on. F major. A really beautiful phrase there. Then he gets to A minor 7 flat 5. He lands on this 9, which is a little tense. But then he resolves it, doing an enclosure to the 3rd. You notice again in his left hand, treating that A minor 7 flat 5 as, with his left hand, as A7, right? With that natural 3rd here. Flat 7, natural 3rd. Over this D7 flat 9, you have another kind of altered phrase. Right, so you see this A flat, so you see a flat 5, you see a sharp 5, 7. You see a natural 9. Right, so that's a really interesting sound. And almost a little whole tony for a moment. But then he doesn't keep that natural 9 going. Truly whole tone would be, right? But he's still sticking within that altered sound. Just that sharp 9 is a little variant up to that flat 9 here. Enclosure into the 5th for G minor 7. Okay? So let's hear the second A one more time. Lots of great stuff to take here with this basically the B section, right? And one thing I want to point out is, I want you to note this throughout the transcription, his interactive comping, right? A lot of call and response. So he starts out with this nice grace note here, by the way. But even that right there, that's a very interactive back and forth right there. Call here, response. Call here, response here. Right? And here even, this sustained left-hand chord is almost a response to what was happening here in the right hand, right? He is playing at the same time with both hands a lot of times, but there's also a nice dose of interactive comping too, which is a really beautiful touch. That sustained left-hand chord I want to bring out, because throughout a lot of this, like I was mentioning, there's a lot of offbeat comping, and there's a lot of short jabs, right? But here, this sustained left-hand chord, if you did that all the time, it would really, maybe you would say it would kill the vibe. It wouldn't really be totally swinging. But just by throwing it in as a contrast, it's really beautiful, and it came at the perfect time, right? It's almost like that thing that you didn't know that you really wanted to hear, and that's what that is there. That contrast with that sustained left-hand chord there, it's a really beautiful timing compared to all of the short jabs he had been doing for the first two A's, right? Another thing I want to point out in the right hand is that bluesy double stop. He does this at a couple points throughout the transcription, right? Right here for C minor 7. He's not playing a left-hand voicing, but I'll play one so you hear what it sounds like against that. Okay, so basically that flat 5 or that sharp 4 grace note resolves into the 5th with pedaling the 8 up top. Right? He does that later with G minor too. Right? Flat 5 resolving up to 5 plus 8. Right? You hear the chord note triplets here again too, right? Measure 22. Right there. 1, 2, 3. Right? Just like at the very beginning, right? It's chord note triplets, really beautiful, really swinging. Then you hear a little diminished scale run. Right? So all that is diminished scale right there. Right? He's actually playing a B flat altered voicing in his left hand. Right? So what's going on is sharp 9, 3, sharp 9, flat 9, root, flat 7, and then he kind of resolves early to this G. He's treating this G as resolving to E flat major, and he anticipates, again, harmonic anticipation with his left hand, playing the E flat major voicing there too, right? Let's hear this all again. Okay, really beautiful stuff right there that I want to point out in that last section, the C section. Really awesome stuff there. That 2-5 is so beautiful, where he goes. First of all, great bebop language there. Right? Using that as a way to resolve to the third there for A minor 7 flat 5. Here's the thing he does throughout. 3, flat 9. Rather than just going straight to the 1, he rhythmically wants to fill up another beat. So he does 2 chromatic approaches from below. Now here, the first clue is actually from our left hand. So in his left hand, he's playing these all as dominant chords, right? Again, secondary dominance, like we were talking about before. Rather than G minor 7 to C7 and then F minor to B flat 7, which are the original chords of Autumn Leaves, he's going G7, he's playing a G13 voicing. He's going C7. This G is kind of ghosted up top. You can't really hear it, but I bet you his hand is over this formation. F7 to B flat 7. Right? So that's why his line for G minor 7, quote unquote, he's playing a third, is because it's actually a G7. Right? And not only is he targeting these thirds, which is a really great approach. Third again. Third. Third. Right? But another thing I want to point out here is the use of 16th-note ornaments. Right? Sometimes you'll hear various types of ornaments. 8th-note ornaments, triplet ornaments, 16th-note ornaments. Kenny would use these 16 ornaments a lot, right, through many of his solos. And it's just a really beautiful texture. It just really adds that professional quality to your solos, just these 16-note ornaments, right? It's an ornamentation, so I'm calling it 16-note ornaments. Because he could go... He could do that, but instead of that, he goes... Really beautiful touch to add in your solos and in your melody presentations, everywhere you're playing. These ornaments, really beautiful touch, right? And that's what he's doing there. After that, you notice another sustained left-hand chord with that E flat 7. In fact, he's leaving out the C, which is a more common way to play that voicing, because he just wants a 3-note spacious left-hand chord. Okay, there are a couple last things I want to point out with this line here. So that's typically something you'd expect to hear over B flat 7, like in a blues. Right? But here he's applying it over G minor 7. Right? So that shows you with line adaptation, right? A lot of these lines you can apply to different keys, right? You can find different, not just different keys, but different chord types, right? So they have multiple chords that they can work over it. It's a little bit of a different color, right? Over B flat 7, it means something different, right? Because this is resolving up to the root, for example. Whereas for G minor, you're resolving up to the flat third. You could also, let's say you use this over E flat major 7, because all the notes work for E flat major 7. It means something different here, right? You're ending up with the fifth. You could even do, let's see, you could even do C minor 7. Okay? You're going up to the 7th. So this line has a different meaning over each chord types, but you can use it over multiple chord types. It's not just a B flat 7 line, right? I encourage you to do that with your lines, is find out what chords that they can work over. And then you have another bluesy double stop here. Right? Lots of great stuff here. This is a fantastic solo. I'm calling it a solo, but it's really a melodic embellishment. The rest of the solo, there's a lot of great things to take from it too. But note this stuff with the first chorus and see how you can incorporate these things into your own playing too. Both all these left-hand concepts as well as the right-hand concepts. Okay, so enjoy this. Kenny Barron transcription on Autumn Leaves. Okay. Enjoy. Bijan Tagavi here. Thanks so much for checking out this sample clip from my exclusive lesson library for my private correspondence students. To come on board, email me. We can set up a free Zoom session. I can tell you all about it. Or click on the link in the description below to read more about my personalized correspondence lessons. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithms.